welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of many wonderful books, but who is here with a debut in a new genre, which is a very exciting prospect. And what a debut. This book really has me absolutely hooked. I cannot put it down. It involves so many of my favorite things: cursed media, lost art, horror that centers around women's lives, especially motherhood and pregnancy. There's so many rich, interesting things that you can do with that. But without further ado, welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, thanks, Jen, and I'm happy to be here. My name's Karma Brown, and I have written a number of books in a number of genres, but this is actually going to be my 11th book published, but it is my debut horror. And so it is titled Mother is Watching, and it's a story about an art conservator in Savannah who ends up receiving this very mysterious painting that is very badly burned. And they think they know who the artist is, but it's not totally clear. So she is tasked with restoring this piece of art. And as she begins to do so, some very strange things start happening. Some terrifying things begin happening, where she is starting to wonder, is it the painting or am I losing my mind? And as we progress through the story, she is going to need to make some very big decisions around what she's going to do about this painting, because her life is at risk as well as the lives of her family. And so the painting, of course, may have some different ideas about how it would like the future to unfold. It maybe wants a little more from her than just being restored to its former glory.
It's such a lovely, lovely, horrifying book. It's really so moody, and it is the exact sort of gothic crumbling walls between reality and horror and delusion. So many themes that I just love so much, and it's used so well here with a really nice kind of speculative twist. Before we get to the book too much, could you tell us a little bit about your journey as a writer and your other works? What made you want to dip into a new genre?
Yeah, I mean, I changed my career sort of midlife and decided that maybe I would just try writing a novel. And it was something that I had not considered doing before. I am a lifelong reader. I really wanted to be a journalist when I was younger. And so then I ended up pursuing that. I went to journalism school and did a master's there. And I was a magazine writer for a number of years. And while I was doing that, I just thought, well, maybe I'll try writing a book. And I had no idea what it meant to write a book. I was doing some long form journalism, but never had I considered what it means to do 80,000 words. So I started this idea that I had. It went very badly. I had no idea what I was doing. I have a couple of practice books that are living in a drawer. And that's fine. That's a common story, I think, for many authors. And then I had my debut publish, which is a book called Come Away With Me. And that came out in 2015. And I subsequently published a number of other sort of what I call tissues required women's fiction novels. Then I flipped to a little bit of a dark domestic historical fiction with Recipe for a Perfect Wife. And I did a couple of books in that genre. I've co-written a couple of holiday rom-coms under a pen name. I wrote a rom-com, a holiday rom-com under a different pen name, but on my own. And now here we are in horror. So, I like to just follow my curiosities, which is why I have moved around through the different genres. And I really like to have the idea, and then that's what holds me. And so whether it is women's fiction or historical or horror, it's like the idea is the thing that really drives me. And horror is my favorite genre to read. So I had always wanted to write a horror. And secretly, I tried to make Recipe for a Perfect Wife, in case anyone has read that book, into a horror a little bit more. But it wasn't meant to be a horror. So I did have to pull back a lot of the hauntings that I wanted to put in it. So here we are with Mothers Watching, and it was finally just the right time to do it.
The personal horror and the what maybe we want to call it societal horror both hit so hard, and they blend together in such really, really interesting ways. Could you talk about shaping Tilly, Mathilde, our main character, and her career as an art conservator? That's always been a job that has really fascinated me, and I almost pursued it until I found out how much science you have to know, and I got scared.
Yeah, it is a surprising amount of science. And I really truly didn't know anything about this job and this career. I was mixing up sort of the art conservators are not the same people who are hanging the art and doing the exhibitions. And I just didn't really understand, what the roles were when this piece of art comes into the museum or into the gallery. And so I did a deep dive in research in terms of what an art conservator does. And I was so fortunate to connect with a woman who's an art conservator of paintings here at the Art Gallery of Ontario, which is our main art gallery. And she just gave me everything I needed to understand how to make Tilly feel very real on the page. So I went in and watched her work. She went through a number of exhibits and paintings that she had worked on and showed me her work. We had many conversations about what it's like to be an art conservator, what's required to do that job. And again, like you said, so much science. I mean, it really is it's like puzzle, what's not puzzle making, but, working on a puzzle and then also understanding like the chemical compounds required to remove some of the grime or the old varnishes that have to be removed so that you're protecting the paint that's underneath and you're making sure that you're maintaining and restoring the piece. So I came away from my work with her and my research just being so fascinated by this job. It is a really interesting career. Maybe you should just try again and see. Don't be afraid of the science. Maybe there's a way around that. I don't know. I doubt it. But yeah, so I really wanted Tilly to have a career that that I hadn't had. I think that's a lot more fun for me to write. It's a lot more work, but it was a really nice way. I mean, originally I had planned on her being a journalist, and she was then participating with this piece of art, sort of as an observer versus being like an active participant. And it just wasn't working. And when I switched it so that she could be much more of an active participant in the story, but with the art, it just completely shifted.
That makes so much sense, and it is a great move because it is also such high stakes work. There have been a lot of really public failures of art preservation in the past couple of decades, and so that's just an entirely another flavor of pressure resting on poor Tilly in this
No.
story. Um, so on that note, let's talk a little bit about world building, particularly how it relates to genre for you, because as we've mentioned, we have this really interesting blend of domestic horror and a speculative kind of dystopia. How did all of that, the genre, playing around with genre, let's say, how did that help shape your world?
Yeah, I was putting so many different things into this book, and I know that there will be some readers who are like, I wish you'd picked just the speculative side, or maybe you could have stuck with the horror. But this was the book that I wanted to write. And I was very curious. I always put feminist themes into my books. That's important to me. But I was also feeling like just very curious and contemplative about women in the world right now, this pronatalist movement, the surveillance that goes on around women's health and women's fertility in particular. And I also wanted to create a little bit of a utopian, dystopian feel to the world where, on the one hand, there are benefits for families and women who are able to have more children, because in my story, I've set it in the near future in Savannah. And what has happened is there has been a pandemic, a virus that has created some infertility, particularly around the men. And so the government, the administration has decided to step in and has all these initiatives, these wonderful initiatives that involve, bonuses and benefits and food and discounts to try to get people to have more children. Now, I was doing a lot of this and putting this in the book even before this administration came in and was, really pushing on that side. So it was interesting to have been working in that. And I mean, I had the whole draft finished before this was really starting to become a big news story, but there were signs of it. So, I wanted to just really balance this. Is it utopian? Is it dystopian? What is it like for women in this world where, you have ambition competing with these domestic expectations? And for Tilly, that's really what's happening. She loves being a mother and she loves her work. And those two things, she tries to marry them together. It's very difficult to do that, as a lot of women understand. So, for me, that was important to look at that loss of identity. And someone has a career that's so important to them, but then they're viewed as maybe the most important thing they can do is be a mother. And what conversation does that create for us? And also, like you said, high stakes, like this painting, her work is high stakes. What she's trying to do around building her family is also high stakes. So Tilly's got a lot going on.
There are so many really lovely details that you add to the world building that really speak in very quiet ways to the ways that the sort of like pro-natalist patriarchy wheedles its way into all the different aspects of culture. Like one moment that really stuck with me, I'll cut this if you want me to not say it, is when Tilly encounters somebody, I think in the supermarket, and she is holding a necklace that she's wearing where the number of jewels or pendants corresponds to how many children that she has. And that was so interesting, just a way that, thinking about how we use fashion to communicate various ideas and hierarchies in relation to each other, because there's like a power differential there where this woman has 6 children and Tilly has one currently at the beginning of the story, well, yeah, I'll edit over.
That's okay. That's what nothing you've said so far has been, that it has been a spoiler.
Okay, sorry. I'm a little antsy with this one, so
I know, I understand. It's okay. Yeah.
And so and also, in addition to the points about fashion, like how patriarchy requires the participation of women in order to keep women down. So there's just so many little, nice points of attention to detail that really linger.
Yeah. And again, for me, like I always try to dig into that a little bit. I look at what I find frustrating or what I find confusing about being a woman, about being a mother, about having a career. I have a daughter. And so I think a lot about this all the time. And when I was creating that world and thinking about what I wanted it to be like for Tilly, there were some of those elements, like the necklaces that the women wear that have rings on them, and it's a ring for every child. And there are benefits that they get for wearing that. It's not just like a statement, right? But it's also a statement. Like, I am a mother. I am doing my part. And here is this piece of jewelry that the government has given me that I also walk into a store and get discounts with, but look at how I'm displaying it on my shirt, or for everyone else to see. And just that idea of what are we required to do here? How much are we required to give up of ourselves? How much are we allowed to have our own desires, in terms of the societal needs? So there was a lot that went into trying to build this world and not wanting that to take over, but it was an important element of Tilly's life. And as she's working on this painting, there are a lot of themes of, motherhood is one of the major themes, and both the push and pull of motherhood, that constant feeling of tension, I think that exists for a lot of women who are also mothers. So
There's a lot of questions, I think, between the focus on Tilly's struggles with fertility and motherhood and pregnancy, and the horror aspects of, let's say, waning mental health as she works on this painting,
mm,
when reality starts to maybe get a little questionable. There are a lot of like really interesting thoughts there about what we are willing to trade in order to reach our goals, whether that is our privacy, and how it relates to like a wearable that might help us conceive our children, or how that relates to doing a job that's really not very good for you at the moment, but that you need in order to also reach your goals. There's a lot that feels very obviously dystopian and a little bit ahead of us, but some of it is so concrete and grounded in the now. There's one detail that really got me when you talked about her having a geriatric pregnancy at 39, and that's not even dystopia. Like that's now. That's like
that's now.
that's not future dystopia. That's now dystopia.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's considered old to be having a child. And so there are extra concerns, which means then there's extra, in Tilly's case, there's extra surveillance, but it isn't just the surveillance, in order to make sure that she remains healthy. The focus is really on the baby. I mean, this is a pronatalist administration in this book, and so that is where the focus is. And they're supporting women to some degree in order to continue to have these babies, and grow the population. But, part of the horror element, there is like the actual horror with the painting, and is it haunted? What's going on? Who was this artist? But there's also the body horror that goes with pregnancy, that is connected to her work that she's doing. But it's also, just that conversation again around what women are physically put through in order to have children. And so the expectation that women will just do that, will just put their bodies through that time and time again for sort of this greater good, and the responsibility of that. And that's something that, I have that conversation a lot with friends and other mothers, and, it's something that I think about a lot. So what is our responsibility to ourselves as women, as people, but then also, do we have a responsibility to society to have more children? Like, how it just starts to get messy. And so there is that horror piece around, the horror of motherhood. Like, we can talk about that, but also in the context of, her work and this just very scary painting.
Could you talk a little bit more about Motherwise, the tech that sort of exists at the center of this drive in society? There's a really great blend of like nurturing and sinister that you hit with it. And I'm curious about like how you hit that. Like there's a tension in every horror, I think, between like the things that are scary and are driving the protagonist away by being threatening, but then also the parts that are alluring, right? Like that question of like, what are we sacrificing? Like, but what do we get from this too? So how do you sort of frame this technology in a way that sort of lets it exist in that gray space? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main things I did with Tilly is just add that level of desperation to her. One, she is desperate to be pregnant again, and not because she wants to access the programs. Those are bonuses for her, and other people in her life are more interested in those programs than she is. This is very much a want, a personal want for her. But she's desperate for it. And her desperation is also then heightened because this work that she's been given, this is sort of a once in a lifetime, once in a career kind of opportunity for her. with this painting to be restored. And it's a bit unusual kind of work in the world that I've created because of what's happened. And so there's also this desperation to get it right, to not make a mistake. There's a very personal connection she has to the artist. So there's further desperation for her to just have that legacy connection. And I won't say what it is exactly so people can read that. So I added these levels of desperation to her that made it so she participated in the program the way that she needed to. And it escalates through the book, just like the escalation with what's going on with the painting. Her personal life is really escalating because it starts very simply with wearables where there are things like breathwork classes. And so you're reminded to do this special breathing regularly and you get gold stars on your watch. And, there's like all those little incentives to do it that sort of give people like, oh, okay, I feel good. I'm doing the right thing. I'm getting acknowledgement for it. But then as things start to unravel, that escalates to the point where she is now really trapped. It's escalating for her personally and professionally. And the Motherwise program, which does have all these lovely things available for mothers and families, like discounts, because money is tight. It's a bit of a gig economy because of what's happened in the world. And so you're trying to just get ahead little by little, very much the way I think people feel now. And so it's like, okay, where can I cut? Where can I cut? And what can help me get where we want to be? So it's just the pressure of it. It becomes hard to say no. And then for her, it becomes impossible to say no.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I realized that there is this really interesting comment about, I think, the tech itself in our lives too. I've often thought about this with like the various like to-do list or like mental health little apps that I might use, that
Yes.
like it wants me to feel better, yes, but it also wants like my dopamine, right? Like it wants my attention.
Yes. And maybe
So
your data too. And
yeah.
so a lot of that came from my own, just the feeling that my attention is constantly being pulled, whether it's social media, which I mostly cut out of this book on purpose because I love to envision a world without Facebook and without Instagram and without that just constantly, vying for my attention, and a world where community is more at play, where, there's a loneliness epidemic. So people are looking after one another a little bit more. But the way that the tech infiltrates every part of our life, even now, like not even in this near future world I created, but right now, I just the other day was on my watch and I was like, oh, okay, I'll do a minute of reflection or whatever it is. And I hit the button and then there's a little like glowing orb that goes, and then I do my minute and it tells me my heart rate and it's putting all of that into my health app on my phone so I can go back and look. And so there is that sense of like you are being monitored, whether you really are aware or not of how much you're being monitored. And right now, a lot of that data is just for our own interests. But what if it isn't? What if at some point that becomes something that can be used against us?
Such good points. And with a lot of these programs, I'll often get that pop-up of like, oh, this is the 43rd time in a row that you've taken 3 deep breaths or whatever it is.
Yes, gold star, Jen, gold
Yeah.
star for you. Yeah.
And there are days when it's like, well, am I doing this because I want to or because I feel like I need to maintain this streak that
That's
doesn't
right.
really mean anything?
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Like, is it actually good for you? Like,
Yes.
is it actually doing something for you? Or is it just that you're feeling a little competitive about, not losing the streak,
Yep. Yeah.
right? And going back to the beginning, to day one again.
Yeah.
So,
It's such a clever use of the technology in this particularly sort of like insidious, slightly future dystopia that feels very familiar, and with a fascinating glimpse at the art conservation world with this really compelling painting. I've tried not to talk too much about the painting itself because I really want people to be able to visualize it on their own. But yeah, it is it's absolutely great. I've had a really great time reading it, and it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great talking to you.
All right, listeners, please check out Mother is Watching. By the time that you hear this, it'll be out in the world, so you can head to your favorite bookstore or website or library, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, thank you for joining us, everyone. It is time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.